Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a new historical romances recommendation video. I was looking through my channel very recently and I realized that I have not made a recommendations video specifically about historical romances in over a year. Like, what is wrong with me? How is that even possible? I don't know. But if you have followed me for any amount of time, you would know that I am a historical romance girly. Like, historical romance is absolutely my favorite genre. It is what I turn to if I don't know what else to read, or if I'm just looking for a comfort read, I'm going to pick up a historical romance. Recently I saw Jen from the Book Refuge make a post on Instagram about how sad she is that not as many people are reading historical romances. I feel like a lot of people were picking them up when the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton were coming out, and that's now, what, a couple years ago, something like that. And so because of that, historical romances were kind of popular, and I remember I was making a lot of content about historical romances because of that. And so I just feel like as time has gone on, we don't even have a release date for season 3 of Bridgerton, probably because of the SAG strike. So who knows when that season's gonna come out. We did get Queen Charlotte, wasn't that earlier this year? But I feel like that show just didn't go nearly as viral as the regular seasons of Bridgerton, so there wasn't that resurgence of love for historical romances. And also, let's face it, the BookTok girlies don't read historical romances, so those are just not the books that are going viral. And it just makes me really sad because I just love this genre so much. I have so much passion for it. I wish that more people would give these books a chance because there are truly some incredible romances out there within this genre. So I wanted to give historical romances some love today, so I decided to give you guys some recommendations specifically for historical romances that are very, very underrated. So my guidelines for this were that I went on Goodreads, and any historical romance that I have read relatively recently that has less than 2,000 ratings on Goodreads counts as underrated for the purposes of this video. Obviously, there are a lot more historical romances that I could talk about that are overall underrated, but I needed to give myself some sort of guidelines so this video didn't go on forever. And so I have done a video with this same premise before. I'll link that probably up in the cards above, but you can also just check out my book recommendations playlist. And I have a lot of videos centered around historical romances. If you are someone that is a beginner in terms of reading this genre, I do have a video all about historical romance recommendations for beginners. And then I just have a couple of other miscellaneous historical romance videos as well. So today I have about 12 books that I want to recommend to you guys that I feel are vastly, vastly underrated, at least according to Goodreads. So I'm gonna try to make this as like rapid fire as possible because I don't need this video to be super long. But the first couple books I want to bring up are very recent releases, so that's definitely one of the reasons why they have so few ratings. The first book I have is The Secrets of a Moonlit Night by Elisa Braden. This is a very new release from Elisa Braden, who has definitely become one of my favorite indie historical romance authors. This is a standalone paranormal historical romance novella that has Gothic vibes, and our main character is a governess to these 3 adorable and hilarious children, and we have a scarred hero who has bought the property next door to where our heroine works, and he's trying to flip it for profit. And so the 2 of them end up meeting, and there is this matchmaking ghost that essentially forces the 2 of them together, and they just can't help but fall for each other. And this was just adorable, and it had those perfect Gothic, spooky, eerie vibes to it because of the ghost and because of the setting. And this was just wonderful. As you can see, I can't stop smiling. I absolutely adored this. Highly, highly recommend for sure. Next, I want to talk about the Drury Lane series. So this is a series of 8 novellas that was written by 8 different historical romance authors. I have now read 3 novellas in this series, and I have really, really enjoyed all 3. I gave 2 of them 5 stars, and I definitely plan on reading the rest of the novellas in this series. I really, really loved both The Phantom of Drury Lane and The Duke of Drury Lane. I talked about both of those novellas in one of my recent reads videos. So if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about those novellas, definitely check out that video. But yeah, this is a series that centers around Drury Lane and how there was recently a fire, so the theater burned down, and now they're trying to rebuild the theater and bring it back to its former glory. And so the first novella, The Duke of Drury Lane, was centering around our heroine, who is working for the director of the theater, and she's trying to get this duke to donate money to the theater, and they end up falling in love along the way. And then there's The Phantom of Drury Lane, which is absolutely a Phantom of the Opera retelling. This one is like a childhood friends to enemies-ish to lover situation, and the hero is an investor in the theater, and there's this mysterious phantom who's been leaving notes. He demands that a specific box be left reserved for him, just like in Phantom of the Opera. And yeah, this was just really fun because the hero and heroine are now investigating like who the Phantom is, and Kate Bateman is the queen of banter. This was just absolutely wonderful. So I highly recommend this entire novella series for sure. It just has a really fun vibe to it, especially for someone like me that really loves theater. You'll definitely really appreciate this series. Next, I have Heartless Duke by Scarlett Scott. There are a couple of other books by Scarlett Scott that I know I have talked about so much on my channel. Nobody's Duke and Lady Ruthless. I talk about those books like all the time, I feel like, but I also really loved this one. So Scarlett Scott is the queen of writing historical romances with the hate to love or the enemies to lovers trope. Like, she writes true hate to love. Her heroes and heroines like hate each other's guts at the beginning of these books. This one's really fun. We have Leo and Bridget, and in the first book of this series, which was Nobody's Duke, she attempted to kidnap someone. And so Leo kidnaps her to interrogate her. And so yeah, these two hate each other from the beginning, and the kidnapping element in this is everything. And I also love, one of my favorite things about this book is that Leo calls Bridget Banshee, and at first that starts out as an insult, but over the course of the book it turns into a term of endearment, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this. So yeah, this book only has 1,877 ratings. I definitely highly recommend this book. You definitely should read Nobody's Duke first before jumping into this one, but I did find the audiobooks for this series on Hoopla. Next up, I want to talk about Up All Night with a Good Duke by Amy Rose Bennett. This one has 1,172 ratings. This book I think came out last year, and this is just a really great Gothic historical romance. We have our heroine Artemis. She is a respectable finishing school teacher by day and a Gothic romance author by night. She meets our hero Dominic, who is a widower, and he is now a recluse. He also has a daughter. I believe she's like 15 years old. And so he's dealing with a lot. And so the two of them meet in a bookshop and sparks fly. I think they end up starting like a fake engagement, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, this just gave me all the Gothic romance vibes that I could ever want. I also loved the discussions between Artemis and Dominic about the romance genre in general, because Dominic doesn't really see the value, the literary value in it. But seeing him learn over the course of the book that romance has its place in literature was just really great to see. So yeah, this was great. I mean, also it's a single dad romance, so that's amazing as well. Next up, let's see, we have How the Wallflower Was Won by Eva Lee. This is book 2 in her Last Chance Scoundrels series. This has 1,824 rating. This is the book that I feel kind of gets forgotten within the Last Chance Scoundrels series because it's book 2, and Finn, our hero, maybe he's not as like notable or interesting as the heroes from books 1 and 3, but I really love this. This is a marriage of convenience between Finn and Tabitha. This is an opposites attract romance. And one of the many things I love about this book is Finn. I feel that he is like a perfect historical romance hero. He is just so sweet and supportive and devoted, but also has a filthy mouth in the bedroom. Like, what more could you want, right? I also really appreciated that he has dyslexia, essentially. And so he was made to believe that he was stupid his whole life when that is so not the case. And so because of that, he feels unworthy of Tabitha. And yeah, I love seeing these two fall for each other and work through their issues. Like I said, it's a marriage of convenience, but I believe they're married by like the halfway mark. So in the second half, we get like marriage in trouble vibes, and that was really amazing. But yeah, this was just really wonderful. I don't think you need to read book 1 to enjoy this one, but I also would highly recommend book 1. Next up, we have, honestly, one of my top favorite romances that I have read by Joanna Shupe, and that is really saying something because I've given so many of her books 5 stars at this point. But this is Baron, which is book 2 in her Knickerbocker Club series. I love this cover so much. Okay, so this one has 1,551 ratings. What's really exciting about this book is that this now has an audiobook. For the longest time, only book 1, which is Magnate, had an audiobook, and none of the other books in the series did. But I think within the last year or so, audiobooks were made for the rest of the series, so that's really great. This is honestly truly one of my favorite hate to love historical romances. I will say that. Oh my god, this is so good. This is about William, and he's a railroad baron. This takes place during the Gilded Age in New York City, so like 1890s. And so he is now looking to get into politics, and in order to look really legit, he needs to marry a respectable woman who can be by his side while he's running for election. Meanwhile, we have our heroine Ava, who is anything but respectable. So she earns a living by being Madame Zolikoff, who is a medium, a psychic medium. And so she hoodwinks gullible people into paying for her services when she is absolutely not a psychic medium. And William basically sees right through her from the beginning. He realizes that she is essentially a con artist, and so he threatens to expose her, and so starts this very interesting hate to love relationship between the two of them. One of the things I loved about this book is the banter. The banter is some of Joanna Shupe's best. There are so many quotes in this book that straight up made me laugh out loud. They were so amazing. And this is also just such a passionate romance between William and Ava. And yeah, this was just amazing. Next up, I have How the Duke Saved Christmas. Okay, this only has 220 ratings, and that is a crime. So this is by Anna Harrington. As you can tell, this is a Christmas historical romance. This centers around Michael and Clara. Oh my god, y'all. This book is painful for sure. There's a lot going on. So a couple of years before this book starts, Clara was like the toast of the ton. She was like the incomparable. She was the woman that everyone wanted to marry in society. But she ends up in this horrible carriage accident that leaves one of her legs severely injured to the point where she can't really walk all that well anymore. Even a couple of years after the injury, like it's severely injured. And so now she is just in a very dark place. She doesn't really see the point in living anymore. Meanwhile, we have our hero, Michael. So he is a duke. They were in a relationship before she had the accident. I think they planned on getting married, but after she had the accident, she just pushed him away, and she didn't really want to see anyone at all. And so then Clara's brother comes to Michael, and he like begs Michael to come back into Clara's life to try to help her heal from this trauma. And so he does, and it's very sweet, very heart-wrenching, but just a beautiful historical romance that also takes place during Christmas time. And I just cannot recommend this highly enough. This is the perfect time to be reading this book, of course, because we're getting into the holiday season. Next, we have To Tame a Wicked Widow by Nicola Davidson. This has 529 ratings. This is book 2 in her Surrey Sexual Freedom Society novella series. That is quite the mouthful. But this is a Regency erotic historical romance novella series that centers around this group of friends who they get together every now and then, and they just talk about things, all things love and sex related. And so this one's really fun because we have our hero Ethan. He is now the new Lord Dare. We have Madeline, who is a widow. She was married to the old Lord Dare, and so Ethan, I think, was like a cousin, like a distant cousin to the old Lord Dare. And so now Madeline is like the Dowager Countess, I think, because her husband passed away. And Madeline's family is convinced that she is like a heathen, she is like a demon, she needs someone to control her, and so their solution is for her to get remarried. And so they tell Ethan, the new Lord Dare, to, you know, help keep her in control basically, but the second he meets her, he's just absolutely obsessed with her and smitten. And so they start this romance. And what's really fun is that Ethan is a virgin hero, and so Madeline is more than happy to give him some experience, and they of course fall in love. And what I really loved about this book is just how well Nicola Davidson balanced the erotic elements with the romance. You still get an amazing love story as well as amazing sex scenes, and I just adore Nicola Davidson's historical romances so much, and this was just a really great one. Next up we have Sleepless at Midnight and Confessions at Midnight by Jackie D'Alessandro. This is a series that I have just started reading very recently. I have now read books 1 and 2, and I am absolutely obsessed. Confessions at Midnight in particular was absolutely incredible, and this only has 1,146 ratings. But yeah, definitely check out my most recent video. I just put out a recent reads video where I just talked on and on about how amazing these two books were, especially Confessions at Midnight in particular is just like a top tier historical romance, like so good. This one involves a passionate affair between Carolyn, who's a widow, and Daniel, who has been pining for her for years, though he is in denial about being in love with her and pining for her. And this was just absolutely wonderful. Sleepless at Midnight was also really great as well, but definitely had a different vibe from Confessions at Midnight. Definitely check out that video if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts, because I had a lot to say about those books for sure. And then last but not least, I mean, come on, I gotta talk about The Cabot Duet by Teresa Medeiros. I have recently been talking about this duet a lot recently because I reread After Midnight, and I just adored this so much upon reread, just like I did the first time that I read it. And then I read The Vampire Who Loved Me last year, and I loved this so much that it was my top favorite historical romance that I read in 2022. So these are just spectacular paranormal historical romances that specifically involve vampires, of course, given the title of book 2. I don't want to say too much plot-wise, just jump into book 1 and go right into book 2 and thank me later. I will show you guys these step backs because they are stunning. They are so beautiful. Absolutely love them. And in terms of ratings, these have more than 2,000 ratings, but because these are older historicals, these came out around 2005, 2006, like these definitely are not talked about as much as I feel they should be. I definitely need to read more from Teresa Medeiros for sure. We actually talked about After Midnight for the Blushing Blue Stocking Society live show discussion that we had, I think a couple of weeks ago at this point, and that is on my channel, so I will link that up in the cards above. But yeah, this is just spectacular, a spectacular duet that I cannot recommend highly enough. I know I'm saying that about all of these books, but I truly cannot recommend these highly enough because they are just absolutely spectacular historical romances. So that is going to be it for this underrated historical romances recommendation video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below telling me about underrated historical romances that you really love. I love getting recommendations from you guys in the comments, and I feel like I'm constantly discovering new historical romance authors. So yeah, definitely give me some recommendations as well as other people that are watching this video. So that's going to be it for this video. I'd love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!